And so the bottom line is there's 30 to 40 or maybe even up to 50% more commission to be paid for IUL. So my question to you is, just when we use common sense, how do you expect the insurance company to give a better return, better results, and pay the insurance agent more commission at the same time? It doesn't work that way. Hey, what's going on, Cashflow hackers? It's Chris with Life 180, and I am up here in beautiful Strawberry, Arizona. I am working on my next book, Cashflow Hacking 2.0, because there's been a lot of changes in the world around us. But the point of this video, and I'm just telling you that because of the setting, the point of this video is talking about Index Universal Life, the 6 most misrepresented components of Index Universal Life, because I just had a conversation with a guy. He is amazing, Dr. Jake. He's phenomenal. He's like a twin flame. He said that phrase, and I gotta say, so big shout out to him because he kind of inspired this video. But here's the deal. IUL is a really misrepresented product. There's people out there selling IUL as kind of like the end all be all. It's the rich man's Roth. It's the solution to a lot of people's problems because it's going to give you the ability to grow your money tax deferred and tax free and have tax free access to it and do all these different things. And a lot of people that have their money in a 401k, that money is tied up. When you put your money in a 401k, you're given the government control of that money. You give up control of your money. There's a lot of opportunity costs that comes along with that. And so I think what happens is Index Universal Life agents, I think a lot of them get into the business because they want to help people. They get into the business because they want to serve, and they're passionate about understanding this themselves. And they're probably like I was the first 3 to 4 years in the business, where that's where my heart was. I really wanted to serve. I really wanted to give back. I wanted to help people as much as possible. And in the process, I stumbled across IUL. I worked with National Life Group, and I just fell in love with the concepts of upside potential and downside protection and all the different things that IUL promises people. But the problem is it's misrepresented because of the fact that it never backs those promises up. Now, one of the things back in 2014 when I left the IUL space and I kind of hopped over to the whole life insurance space and became an advocate for whole life, and more an advocate, not even for a product, but a philosophy, more an advocate for just teaching people financial literacy and financial understanding and financial stewardship and understanding the concepts of, rather than buying and holding and accumulating money, let's buy or let's save money and let's invest for cash flow. And so therefore that's actually, it wasn't not even one of my 6 things that I was going to talk about, but now that I'm saying this, that's one of the biggest challenges that I have with Index Universal Life, is that it's still a zero-sum game. You're still operating from the perspective of that you're saving in a vehicle. It's a long-term perspective because of the surrender charges with the vehicle, with the IUL product in general. You don't have as much liquidity at the beginning to be able to take advantage of opportunity around you. So there's an opportunity cost with that lack of liquidity. Now, when they compare that to a 401k, it's not so bad. But when you look at the fact that we just came through the greatest bull run in the history of the S&P 500 and the Dow Jones Industrial Average, when you look at that, think about it this way. This is one of the reasons I started the IUL Challenge. When you come through a period of time like that, where we have the greatest bull run with a product that promises upside potential and downside protection, the upside potential, greatest bull run of all time, that means you should have realized some of that upside. Fair enough. That's how I interpret that. But I created the IUL Challenge just to say to people, like, hey, if that's the facts, right? If people should be participating in the upside, that means 100% of IUL policies, even the ones that weren't optimized or structured properly, because that's the one thing I get all the time, is like, as long as the policy is structured properly, you're going to be okay. Well, I'll tell you, as long as the policy is structured and funded properly, you're probably going to be okay from the perspective of the policy won't lapse. But the bottom line is you're still running risks inside of that policy because of the fact that if you have expectations for that policy to perform in a certain light, but then you actually get a lesser performance, if you hit 65 and you're playing the long game like everybody tells you to do, like they just pivot. They haven't changed your mindset of saying, hey, I'm trying to retire at 65. They haven't changed that mindset. And that's a broken mindset. That's still playing the get rich slowly game, right? The get rich slowly game. And you're not even getting rich. You're just trying to hopefully get to 65 and maintain your standard of living, right? The bottom line is we need to stop thinking about that. We need to start thinking about controlling our money, start thinking about understanding what are the vehicles, what are the attributes of the financial vehicles and tools that we need to be able to use to be able to accomplish what we want to accomplish. And if you're of the mindset that you're saying, hey, I'm either 50 and I'm a little behind the 8 ball, or I want to retire, I want to have financial freedom, I want to have financial independence in the next 10 years. It doesn't mean you have to retire, by the way. Listen, I'm never going to stop working, ever, period. I could have $10 billion in my account. I'm still going to be contributing and producing because I love what I do, right? And one of the things that I can tell you and that I believe from the bottom of my heart and in my soul is that when we have financial independence, when we have that financial control and we have enough passive income coming in every single month so we don't have to have a job, our ability to have control of our life. What would your life look like if you had 25 hours a week, 40 hours a week of extra time that you could dedicate to you, to building out your dreams and your vision and your mission and contributing and giving back to the world, whether it's your family or church or community or a project that you wanted to build? What would it look like? The bottom line is this is all possible. And one of the main reasons I don't like IUL, because it doesn't really focus on you actually becoming who you need to be to make the impact in the world that you probably had years ago that maybe you've given up a little bit of hope on, maybe you've given up a little faith on, but the bottom line is you deserve it and the world needs you to step into that, needs you to become who you need to be. That's just what I believe. So I'm just saying all that as a context of this video as I go through what the challenges are with the IUL, what the 6 greatest misrepresentations are. I know it's a little bit of a long lead in. So if you don't see the value in that, I apologize, but to me, I've been sitting here up at this cabin that we rented at Airbnb style and thinking about this stuff and spending a lot of time as I've been writing my book. And I don't know if you've ever written a book, but if you have, you get into this space where you become really introspective. You start to think about this a lot. You think about, why am I doing what I'm doing? Why do I believe so much? Because I believe so strongly in my philosophy, in my strategies. And so I never want to be somebody who just moves forward with anything without having evidential backup, right? And so I need to convince myself of my own beliefs. That's just kind of the way that I operate. I'm a very critical, skeptical, analytical person by nature when it comes to this stuff. And so that is that. So without further ado, let's get into the 6 most misrepresented components of the #1 misrepresented financial product in the world, which is Index Universal Life. So first and foremost, IUL is just a financial experiment right now. So here's the deal. A lot of people, Doug Andrew does this worse than anybody in my opinion, but he goes back and he says, listen, this has been around since the early 80s. No, it hasn't. Index Universal Life has only been around since 1997, but until 2009, IUL has only had like a 1% market share of the permanent cash value life insurance market share. And so when you look at 1997, when Transamerica actually created the IUL, to 2009, and they had such a small market share, well, think about what happened in 2007 and 8. It was a Great Recession, right? And so when you look at the Great Recession and you looked at how much people got destroyed, that story of upside potential and downside protection became really appealing to a lot of people. And so the challenge is that while the upside potential and downside protection story, it's there, it's really a half truth. And this is really just a financial experiment, because if you look at every year since IUL actually became a relevant product, not in existence, but a relevant product in the financial marketplace, which is 2009, every single year they have performed worse and worse and worse and worse. IUL companies have reduced performance. This is the main reason I created the IUL challenge, because once again, in the greatest bull run of all time, they should have outperformed every single time. Even the ones that were structured properly have not met the illustrated rates. And so what I'll say is, if you have one and you're an agent that believes that, I'll pay you $1,000. All you have to do is show it to me. That's it. Now, I fully anticipate that, because I know it is possible, I fully anticipate that I will have to pay at some point in time on the IUL challenge. I didn't create the IUL challenge from a perspective of saying this isn't possible. I created the IUL challenge saying, well, if IULs are supposed to be this great upside potential, downside protection vehicle, they should be creating a more predictable result for people around the country. Everybody who's utilizing this product should be getting a more predictable result. And the fact that I've had 600,000 views of these videos with not one submission of anybody that's able to do it tells me that while I may have to pay somebody at some point in time this $1,000, the fact is if it's 1 out of 1,000 policies, for instance, that is actually performing the way it was sold, that's a big problem. That's going to be a really systemic issue. And I think if IULs performed like that and they've been this financial experiment that's been failing for the past decade and a half while the market has been in the greatest bull run of all time, they're going to get even worse, and the financial experiment is going to be shown to be a failed experiment when the market turns and we have a couple flat years or we don't have the greatest bull run of all time backing it up and kind of bailing it out. And so that is reason number one. Reason number two that I think IUL is misrepresented is because you don't control the costs inside of the IUL. Here's the deal. A lot of people think that you can do privatized banking or infinite banking with Index Universal Life. The bottom line is you cannot do infinite banking or privatized banking or any kind of banking whatsoever with Index Universal Life because you don't have the guarantees and the control of the money and the capital inside the policy. The surrender charges are too high. The fees are not fixed. A lot of people talk about the fact that IULs are more transparent than whole life because of the fact that they put the ledger of all the expenses and the fees and the charges. And I say this all the time is that they don't put that ledger on there because they're trying to be transparent about what the fees and the charges are inside of the policy. They put that there to put the little asterisk up in the corner to tell you these fees can change. And they have to legally, because of regulation, be transparent what those are because of the fact that they can change, that they got to tell you that they can change. With whole life, they don't tell you what the necessarily what every little tiny charge in the policy is. But the great part about whole life is that what you see is what you get. There's no ability for the company to manipulate what those charges and fees are going to be. And so from that perspective, that's why I say whole life insurance is an infinitely, part of the pun, more transparent product than Index Universal Life because it's going to get you a more predictable result and it's going to put you in more control and take the life insurance company out of control with the ability to maneuver your fees and to their benefit. One of the things I always tell people before I move on to number 3 here, one of the things that I always tell people is that when you are a policyholder with a participating mutually held life insurance company, you are a business partner with them. You basically share in the profits of the company like a stockholder would share in the profits through a dividend with a publicly traded stock. With an IUL, you're a profit center for the company. You have no control. The life insurance company has all the control, and you are a profit center for that company. So there's no negotiating that. That is not something that's up for debate. That is a fact. That is just a straight up fact. And so, not to mention that, I just keep ripping off more stuff here, but not to mention the fact that, whole life insurance, the top compensation for New York-based companies is 99%, and you can get up to 130 from a top contract perspective with companies that are not based in New York. But IULs, I've seen contract rates up to 170, 175. If you have a big enough organization, you can get those contract rates. And so the bottom line is there's 30 to 40 or maybe even up to 50% more commission to be paid for IUL. So my question is, just when we use common sense, how do you expect the insurance company to give a better return, better results, and pay the insurance agent more commission at the same time? It doesn't work that way. So number 3, cap rates can be reduced. I talk about this all the time. This is one of the biggest things. Back in 2011-12, cap rates were in the 15 to 17% range. Now they're in the 8 to 10.5% range. They've been dropping over the past decade. A lot of people think that cap rates are going to go back up. One of the reasons that I've been talking and doing videos about whole life insurance, I think is going to outperform Index Universal Life over the next decade is because look around us. Mortgage rates have gone from a year ago at 3% and now they're 7.5% on average as I checked this morning. It's like 7.46%. Is the average mortgage rate. So when we look at this and we see rates going up, that tells me I want to be with a life insurance company and a participating mutually held company because the general fund is going to perform better. Now, a lot of people say, well, if the general fund performs better, the dividends are going to perform better for the whole life insurance company. Well, yeah, that's true. And so I want to participate in that with the life insurance company. Now, if you don't understand how this works with an IUL company, what they do is they basically take what they would credit you for a dividend and then they go risk it and they buy options with it. And if you understand the options market in increasing rate environments, there's going to be a lot more volatility in the markets. And when there's more volatility in the markets, the indexes are going to perform worse. So even if the cap rates go up, markets probably aren't going to perform as well. And so you're not going to have as many good years. But more so, options costs go up when the volatility of the markets are more drastic, right? So as options costs go up, that negates the benefit of the general fund going up. And so the cap rates are not going to go up and you actually get stuck on the worst side of everything. For the next 10 years, I'd rather take the crediting rating from the dividend that the company wants to pay me rather than go through and have the insurance company risk it in an index, right? Because put it this way, use common sense. If risking the dividend to buy a call option to participate in the S&P 500 with a cap rate with an option, right? If that made sense and the insurance company could do that predictably to beat their general fund return, they would be doing it themselves. And so when we kind of reverse engineer this and we use a little common sense, we start to realize that it makes no sense at all. And then when you use common sense, you go to whole life insurance every single time. Now, cap rates have been coming down. They're going to continue to go down. That's my belief. Obviously, there's no fact behind that. But when you look at the fact of how cap rates are created based on general fund performance and options costs, and you look at the variables in the marketplace right now, it just tells me that it's not a good look for IUL in the future, not to mention market performance is going to be down. And that's one of the reasons Bobby Samuelson is actually somebody who is a thought leader on this. He's done more studies. He's got more research on this than anybody else. So I want to give a shout out to him. I've done a lot of my learning from his research. lifeproductreview.com. Go check him out. He's an amazing thought leader in this space. If you have any questions, you don't want to believe me, just go check out Life Product Review. Spend the $99 a month to follow him because it is going to be one of the most valuable investments that you will make in this industry. Number 4, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because its participation rates can be reduced. And actually, I'm going to just jack this in and go to number 5 and say spread charges can be increased. And I'm going to wrap this up in a nice little bow with 4 and 5. And because with the participation rates, actually with the cap rates, the participation rates, and the spread charges, at the end of the day, none of it matters because all that matters is what I was talking about in the cap rate component, right? Where we're talking about what is the options budget that's created by the general fund performance of the insurance company, what is the options cost, and those two functions are going to be what control what is the cap rate, right? Period. It's going to be controlling what is the participation rate. It's going to control what are the spread charges. Now, let me explain what a spread charge and a participation rate are. Participation rate is saying if the market does 10% and you have a cap rate of 10% and you have a 100% participation rate, that means you get 100% of that. If it's 140% participation rate, you can, and the market only does 8%, you're going to get 140% up to the 10% cap that it is, right? A spread charge is saying in an uncapped index, a lot of times they'll say, oh, there's an uncapped index. Well, there's going to be a spread charge associated with it, or a participation rate, or something in a no cap index. Because remember, we can't reduce cap rates if there's no cap. So they got participation rates and spread charges that get injected into every no cap index. And this is one of the most manipulated sales tactics of all IUL agents out there. But the bottom line is it doesn't matter if it's a cap rate, a par rate, or a spread charge. The insurance company controls all the power when it comes to reducing your performance and increasing their control of the money and profitability. Now, here's the one thing. It's not all about the insurance company, by the way, gaining profitability. It's about the function that the market just kind of stinks, right? Like it's not conducive to what you're trying to accomplish with an IUL. When we look at where things are going and what the interest rate environment is doing, it is not looking well for Index Universal Life, especially over the next decade. Now, once again, I'm not going to argue. There may be policies that have looked good over the past 3 years, but guess what? That doesn't matter because a lot of that money's tied up in surrender periods. As that surrender schedule, comes to maturity, the insurance company is going to reduce the performance. They're going to reduce the cap rates, reduce the par rates, increase the spread charges, increase the cost of insurance. The administrative fees are going to go up. Like all these different things, those are the things that matter the most in its control. And when you look at this is one of the reasons that you cannot do, once again, you can't do infinite banking. You can't do privatized banking with this stuff. No matter what Curtis Ray tells you, no matter what Doug Andrew tells you, these guys have no idea what they're talking about when it comes to infinite banking. They especially, I can't say this about Doug, but especially Curtis, he hasn't been in this business long enough to even see one of his MPI plans play out over the long haul. He just hasn't. So for him to say, oh, we've stress tested this and it's got to go negative for 8 years, which is one of his agents said that to me on TikTok the other day. It's like, it's absolutely absurd that they could be making those claims without getting in trouble. And so one of the reasons I'm creating this content is because I just want to build transparency around what all this stuff is and how it works. And for you as either an agent who's selling or somebody who's looking to buy this, to think critically, to understand so you can make an educated decision. I have no interest in selling you anything. Listen, one of the things I tell people, whole life insurance may not be the right decision for you. You may not be in a place where it's the right thing for you right now. You might have a complete train wreck of a financial life and you need to fix all your other stuff before you get into it. But the bottom line is, like, I believe it should at some point in time be a cornerstone foundational asset in your life. If you understand all the moving parts to it, I think you will come to the same conclusion. But the bottom line is you can't do this stuff with Index Universal Life. And that is number 5. And I know I'm just kind of all over the map on this, but as I'm talking through this, it's just bringing up so many things. I listed out top 6 things and man, you know, that is what it is. So, all right, here we go. Number 6, policy loans. So Index Universal Life policy loans. And I'm gonna talk about this for a second. Index Universal Life illustrations. When you run a policy loan in an illustration, it runs with a positive 50 basis points of arbitrage. So what does that look like? That means people like Curtis Ray can run an MPI plan, and his relock feature that he talks about is simply just policy loans. That's all it is. It's a policy loan. It's an Index Universal Life policy. That's all it is. That's what MPI is. It's an Index Universal Life policy. So I'm not going to talk about MPI. I'm going to talk about Index Universal Life, and I'm going to talk about how policy loans work. The relock feature is simply a policy loan inside of the Index Universal Life policy. So when you look at this, think about it this way. On the illustration, Regulation AG 49A allows there to be 50 basis points of positive arbitrage. 50 basis points of positive arbitrage makes it so everything illustrates really well. And I'm not going to lie, it looks sexy as anything else I've ever seen in my life financially on paper, right? It does. However, if it worked that way, I'd be all over it. I wouldn't have left the industry. I wouldn't have stopped representing that product. I would have been doing, I would be doing that still. I would be behind it and advocating for it. But the bottom line is when you start to realize that it doesn't work that way, when there's more risk, because listen, if you start to take policy loans out for income and retirement, or policy loans out to get more insurance and to buy more policies, thinking that there's going to be positive arbitrage in there because the policy will let you illustrate it, the problem is read the fine print in the illustration and it will tell you straight up, even though it gives the positive 50 basis points of arbitrage, it will tell you in the policy, taking loans from the policy injects more risk into the policy. Every company states it a little bit differently, but it basically says by taking a policy loan, you are increasing the chance of this policy lapsing, or you're increasing the chance of your requirement to add more premium to the policy to eliminate the chance of lapsing the policy. And so from that perspective, I would say when you understand how the policy loan feature works inside of IUL, you need to realize that you are taking a lot more risk on, because let's say you take a policy loan year 3 and you start getting more insurance, and then year 4 you do the same thing, year 5 you do the same thing. What you don't see is that those loans are compounding against you, and as long as there's positive arbitrage, it's great. But year 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, if you have 2 or 3 or 4 years of let's say you're doing a big policy and you got like $1 million of policy loans and it's like $100,000 a year, because I deal with bigger, I'll scale it down a little bit. How about that? We scale it down to $10,000 a year premium. And by the time you hit the year 10, you got $100,000 in policy loans. And then, and everything's going to be relative, right? Your policy is going to be smaller. So the insurance is going to be less, and the net amount at risk is going to be less for the company, or is going to be about whatever it is for the company. But you got that $100,000 of policy loans, you borrow against it, and then the market goes down. Well, they say upside potential, downside protection, you can't lose your investment. Well, guess what? you still have the insurance charges, you still have the expenses, the admin fees, all those different things, but now you also have the policy loans. If you're paying 4.5% on a policy loan and the market does negative, that's an extra 4.5% negative that it goes. But on top of that, it goes against your net amount at risk. So it increases the spread of the net amount at risk, which is what the insurance costs are based on in the insurance company, from the insurance company's perspective. So in the next year, if the market does negative again, now you have more insurance charges, the admin fees are what they are, and then you still have more policy loan charges that will go along with it. And so these things compound against you. And so that's one of the greatest risks that people are not talking about with any of these other plans, these other strategies that they're leveraging policy loans to get more insurance, to save more, to sell you on this concept of positive arbitrage. But all you're doing is injecting more risk. And over a period of time, I promise you, just read the fine print of the illustration and you'll see what I'm talking about, that you are taking on infinitely more risk. And I think if everybody understood what they were getting involved with before they did it and they read the fine print, you would never go with Index Universal Life. You would avoid that long-term buy and hold zero-sum game of like still playing the get rich slowly game of trying to get to 65 and being able to hope and pray and cross your fingers that you're going to be able to maintain your standard of living. My encouragement to you is, this is why I love cash flow hacking. This is why I started this concept of saying, stop investing for that long term. Stop playing the get rich slow. Don't try to play the get rich quick scheme either, right? Start thinking and realizing you need to become more so you can serve more, so you can accomplish your goals. You are where you are because of who you are. You need to level up. You need to get yourself committed to a strategy and a plan. You need to save money. You need to be able to put yourself in a position where you can become a sound investor. You need to start investing for cash flow. And when you do, you will become financially independent much sooner. There's no reason you need to wait 45 years to retire. You could do anybody, no matter where you're starting right now. If you focus on cash flow investing and becoming more, you can get there in 10 years. That's my promise to everybody. I've seen too many people to do it that, to not realize it's true. I know beyond the shadow of a doubt in any economy that is possible. The thing I also know about Index Universal Life is it's a financial experiment. That's what it is. It's a financial experiment. We don't know what's going to do. It hasn't been around long enough. It's been around since 1997. It's only got like a real backing since 2009 as far as like a real history of results with any kind of market share. So we're talking about a 13-year window where it's done nothing but perform worse and worse and worse and worse and worse every single year. I don't know about you, but that's not something I want to get behind. And if we're talking about a long-term plan and a long-term vision, how can somebody sell you anything on a plan 40 years from now when the product's never been around to experience that kind of longevity? And if you understand that Index Universal Life is simply a universal life chassis with an option strategy attached to it, and then you look at the previous types of universal life, the traditional UL, the VUL, the GUL, all these different things, they all ran into their own problems because at the end of the day, IUL is like putting lipstick on a pig. It's still a universal life chassis, which is just wrought with problems. And you're not going to fix it by slapping an option strategy on top of it. And that's all Index Universal Life is. I just implore you to really think about that before you sell another one, before you put your money into anything of that nature. And that is it. So I hope it makes sense. I know that's a lot. Super intense topic. This video ended up being a lot longer than I thought it would be. I kind of went on a couple extra rants. Hopefully that was like extra credit, extra value, that you found this value. If you found value in this, my ask to you is like it, share it, get it out there with people. I am just so passionate right now about making sure that the world knows the truth about this product and the world knows, that what you got into this industry for, because I know a lot of the agents that got into this business just want to help people and they think that this product is the saving grace, but it's not. And it's why I do what I do, is to try to coach people and teach people how to follow the right process. We need to stop thinking a product is going to solve our problems, start thinking about financial principles. And when you start looking at the attributes and the principles of what we're looking for, you realize Index Universal Life isn't it. Typically, traditional whole life insurance, when it's designed properly, is the way to go. So comment in the comment section below if you have any questions at all. I look forward to connecting and engaging with every single response. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe, hit the bell, that way you're notified every time I launch a new video. Until next time, have a blessed, inspirational day. We'll talk soon.